Today's guest is the one and only Glenn Beck. He's a best-selling author, a media icon, founder of The Blaze, and of course, one of the most influential conservative voices in America. Today, we're talking about the political earthquake that just hit the country, from the rise of socialism in the United States to the long-ranging impact of recent elections, Prop 50 in California, voter ID laws in Maine, massive demographic shifts. And what does all this mean going into 2026, 2028, and beyond? We're taking a deep dive into Zoran Mamdani. Who is he? Who's funding him? Who's the global network behind these more radical candidates? And why are far-left ideologies that used to live online now winning real power in American cities? If you care about the future of democracy, free speech, immigration policy, crime, taxes, and the radical reshaping of American politics on both the right and the left, this is a conversation you don't want to miss.
Keeping it real with Jillian Michaels.
Okay, boss, welcome to the show. How are you?
I am great. It is such a thrill for me. I love the fact that we're getting to know each other because I've been such a huge fan of yours. And because of the way politics is and everybody is just, you don't know what's true and what's not. I'm like, she probably hates my guts.
Oh my gosh.
And I just so glad that we have a chance to become friends because I just adore you. Just adore you.
Oh, well, thank you. And it's absolutely mutual. And I know that feeling, truthfully, because I thought the same. And it's like, they probably feel like I'm interloping and I'm corrupting some of the ideas of the party, and but I identify more with
don't ever. I hate the Republican Party. I've been saying from the get-go of this journey of mine, it started about 2002. Principles. Forget about parties. Just can we talk about principles? Because parties, their only job is to get their guy elected. It doesn't matter what the principle is. Mm-hmm. It's just a machine to get you elected. So forget about the parties. Just stick with the principles. And we wouldn't get so lost all the time.
Oh my gosh. I love that so much. It's so true. I actually had that conversation with a young man named Kaizen Asiadu. And it had to do with how to conduct yourself in a world where people have just lost all civility with each other. And it's like they treat you a certain way and then you respond in kind. And I was thinking, this is not who I am. I don't launch into ad hominem attacks. And he said, just as a person, just remember your principles and they should guide you no matter what, Jillian. Yes. And
I tell you, it's we're in this time period right now where if I don't attack who you want me to attack, then you have to attack me. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
I don't want to attack people. We are in, look, I've done my share of trouble. When I first got into this, when I was first on the scene, I was the third most admired man in the world. I tied. This is how stupid this thing is. They come out with these every year. I don't remember who does it. Like Gallup does it or something. And one year I was tied with Nelson Mandela and the Pope.
That's amazing.
I know. And I was with my family. It was during the holidays. I was with my family and one of my security guys came in and said, sir, just have to show you this. And he handed it to me and I read it out loud to the family. And I said, we've got to get down on our knees and pray for our country right now. This is how low the standards are. Okay. This is craziness. But then doing the same show, but I did it on Fox. A year later, I'm one of the most hated men in America. And, that was not my intention. My intention was just to wake people up. And use comedy and theatrics and whatever to wake people up.
That comes with consequences, though. We both know that.
I know that. However, now the consequence, I think the consequences now are beyond, I said this on the air today. This is beyond the Republic. Yeah. This is save your soul time, not save the Republic. we are in a battle of good and evil that if we don't stop and say, no, I'm not playing this game. I am not playing this game anymore. In fact, I would like to invite you to come over here because what you're playing right now is ancient evil.
Oh my gosh, Glenn. That's why I wanted to talk to you specifically about the election results. And it's like, I know. We can report who won, blah, blah, blah. It's not what it's about for me. It's what we're seeing and what this means. Like having socialism come to the West. It's not like we haven't tried this before.
I know. There's two things. And, my side hates this when I talk like this because they're like, stop excusing. And I'm like, I'm not excusing. I'm explaining. First of all, one of the things that stops when we stop talking to each other is we grow arrogant. And what we're really saying, when I say, I'm not talking to that person anymore because that person voted for or did this, what that's saying is, I cannot learn anything more about that person or their choices, okay? And that is the most arrogant thing you can say. What we should be saying is, I want to understand how you got there. How did you get there? One of the questions I really want to ask on people that were saying that it was okay to have strippers, even strippers that are still claiming their own sex, but strippers in first grade. What happened to you? How did you get there? Because I know you were with the rest of humanity going, that's not healthy. That's not healthy. And now you're suddenly like, that has to be done. Somebody needs to say, how did you get there? Because I really do want to understand. My guess is politics. I was divided before then, and I just became political. And so I'm just going along. And before you know it, if you just keep turning things off, you get to the road to where you're just in line for that. And that's the only way I can explain it. Socialism is different. Socialism, put yourself in a mindset where you are 30 years old. You're 30 years old. You were, 5, 6 when the World Trade Center was hit? You don't have any recollection of that. So you don't know what America was like when we didn't have, the Department of Homeland Security, where we didn't have, the FISA courts and this gigantic government that is just everywhere.
Yeah.
You don't remember a time when the two parties just said, they're evil, no, they're Hitler. You don't remember that at all. You probably begin to remember when your folks lost their house or lost their job or couldn't get a loan, lost their car, but you watched the banks being bailed out. And you're like, wait, what? And then just a few years after that, you're told you have to stay home, and mom and dad lost their job or lost their business because Home Depot was somehow safe, but mom and dad's Ace Hardware store was not safe. If you put yourself in that mindset, and let me add one more thing.
Okay.
You played by the rule. You went to school, you studied hard, you were told your whole life, if you go to college, you're going to get a good job, have good grades, do the right thing, you'll get a good job. And now you've done all those things and you're straddled with this Herculean debt that you can't lift and no job. I got to tell you, if you're in that mindset, I get it. You see this system that is absolutely looks like an absolute failure. And on top of it, you've had teachers your whole life teach you capitalism is bad, the free market is bad, socialism is neat. I don't need to tell you about Mao or Stalin or any of that stuff. It's just never been done right. Of course you choose socialism. Of course you do. There's no way you don't. You're a miracle if you haven't.
Oh my God. Okay. I have so much to show you that illustrates everything you just said. Because you know who else predicted this the way you are is Charlie Kirk. Take a look at this. He sounds just like you.
Is the number one issue for young people. If we don't address it, we go to dark places. What does that mean? So a couple things. Number one, the rise of Mamdani should be it's a coming attraction of what is coming next.
Who's Mamdani?
Zoran Mamdani, the Muslim communist that is running for mayor in New York City. His ideas are terrible. He wants the city to run the grocery stores, all that. But I think everyone's not everyone, but most people are missing the point of really what this is. This is yet another distress signal by young people to say, hey, if you're not going to fix our life economically, we're going to get very radical politically.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely right. He is, let me go a step further.
Yeah.
This is not the end of it.
That's what I was going to, that's what I was going to ask you. Where are we going with this?
So right now, what people don't understand is, and you can't talk about this because people either love or hate Donald Trump.
Okay.
And, you can't excuse everything that Donald Trump has done that's not, that isn't great, but you can't condemn everything he's doing. Can we just try to understand what he's thinking and what he's doing? Because he is a brilliant businessman and a great negotiator. So what is he doing? He saw this world, and I don't think he understood this in his first term. He saw the world, and he understood what the World Economic Forum was doing, what the UN is doing, that the West had given up on itself. And the West said, it doesn't work. It's tired. We're all in debt. There's no way out except one big global government, because that's what the left always does. They'll take a problem and then they'll just make it bigger and say, well, let's just lift it up to the federal level. Now let's lift it up to the global level. And it's just pushing crap up, and it never seems to fail until it fails catastrophically. So he saw this and was like, that's not the way to go, because he actually believes in the free market. And let me tell you this, the actual free market. When I lived in New York City, I watched him build something on the east side, and he took and dug underneath the East Side Highway. This stuff's not done in New York, by the way. It took me a year to build a studio in New York. Okay? It's impossible to get things done. He tunnels underneath. He builds a highway underneath. He then builds a park on top and 5 or 6 enormous buildings. In the same time, across the street, the city has built one sanitation building. One. And it's like 15 stories tall. They didn't finish it. He started and finished all of that before they finished this one building. And I drove by there every day watching this, and I thought, this guy has got to be in bed with the mob. I mean, how is he doing this? How can he do this in this city? He's got to be riddled with the mob. That guy was the most investigated guy. There's no doubt in anyone's mind. Every Five Eye agency looked into his life.
Wow.
Every investigative journalist, everyone looked and turned over every stone. If they have to make stuff up or take little things and go, look at this, this guy is the cleanest guy I've ever seen. Okay. How does he do that in that city? And there's no mob ties. He never did anything shady to get that stuff. That doesn't happen in New York. Right. It doesn't happen in New York. So anyway, brilliant guy, actually believes in fair play, actually believes in the free market. He gets in the second term, and now he's boned up. Now he knows what the game is, and he knows it's a global game. And so he says, okay, the debt of all over the world, it doesn't work. He believes in growing your way out of debt. I don't know if that's going to work, but that's what he believes. But he also believes America must lead the world. So he goes back in and he takes, like Bretton Woods, all these things, these financial deals that we made with the world in 1945 after World War II. We set up this entire structure that the world has been running on since 1945. It doesn't work anymore, and everybody knows it. What does he do? He doesn't take the UN, the World Economic Forum, and everybody around the world to get together at these big councils and take 25 years to come up with something. He's like, we're just going to end that. Here's what we're going to do. And he is completely restructuring the entire global financial system. That's why he's traveling around. That's why everybody is meeting in the White House, because he's restructured so you can be independent and free and still survive what's coming. And America, he's putting, I think, number one. That's what he's doing. But that takes that we're not going to notice that for another 5 to 10 years.
Right.
In the meantime, people are struggling. So what is coming if he doesn't? And there's a few things that he could do, but his hands are tied. The Federal Reserve's out of bullets. You can't just flood money into the market anymore. You can't do any of those things. If he doesn't act boldly and find ways to help people get homes, help people with their student loans. And I hate that. They took the loan out. I didn't. But there are things that he can do, like default. It's the only loan you can't default on. That's not right. But if he doesn't take some of these steps, Mamdani, AOC will be the president of the United States or somebody like that, because conservatives have not found a way to understand what's happening at the dinner table. Only Donald Trump gets it, that understands what it's like to be a working man and then says, I'm not going back to the old ideas of what we lived in the 20th century, because that system was corrupt and it didn't work. I'm telling you, we start at the foundation and we build a new house on top of it. That you can sell, but you're not going to sell, hey, let's go back and be more like Ronald Reagan. Nobody knows who Ronald Reagan was. They don't know. They don't care.
Can we talk about AOC for a second? I actually want to show you a clip, since you bring her up, of her talking about Mamdani and essentially taking down the old guard with regard to the Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
Take a look at this one.
They were not just tasked with defeating a Republican. They were also tasked with defeating the old guard of the Democratic Party that essentially led us to many of the perils of this moment. So he had a two-front war to win, which is what makes his victory so deeply impressive.
Again, she says everything you said.
Right. And notice the press is not making a big deal out of this. When I saw that clip, I thought, wait a minute. That's what people said about Donald Trump. He just defeated the old broken structure. And what the press said was he's a radical extremist who won't listen to reason in his own party. Why aren't they saying that about AOC?
That. I have a theory, by the way, and I didn't want to drag you into this. I was going to do a whole monologue on it later in the show, but this is my theory, is that adults are too weak to be the adult in the room. They're terrified of their own obsolescence. And this is why Chuck Schumer cowers in a corner, worrying that AOC is going to primary him, and the lunatics are allowed to run the asylum. That is my theory on it.
So I think you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Fear rules the world. And let me tell you, I don't know if you know this about me. I'm a recovering alcoholic who just destroyed my life. I mean, bad choice after bad choice after bad choice. By the time I'm 30, I'm broke. I've lied to everybody because alcoholics are really good liars. And I have nothing left. And, you get into AA and you start to have to make an inventory of all the things that you've done and all the things that you've hurt and everything else. And I start making this list, and it was terrifying to me because I realized that's who I believed I was. All of those things is what I believed made me me.
Right.
Even my angst, even my, all of that stuff, that's all I had. And you have to make a choice. Am I going to let go of that and find what's real and find what's new? When you ask questions, ask honest questions. The press asks gotcha questions. I want honest questions. And honest questions mean that I will change if you present new evidence that shows my thinking is flawed. That's an honest conversation and an honest dialogue. We're not having those, and mainly because everyone wants to be right. Schumer and everybody else, they want to be right. They want to keep their power. And they're afraid now of being eaten by what I believe are some very dangerous people. I said in 2004, Michael Moore was put into the presidential box, I think next to Jimmy Carter at the convention. And I said, don't let a socialist into that box. Do not embrace the socialist. You think you're using them.
Right.
They know they're using you, and they will win in the end, and they will eat you before they eat me.
Glenn,
and that's what's happening.
I want to talk a little bit about this. I think these kids, they clearly don't understand what socialism results in and how it's played out. So one more clip I want to show you before we get into that, because if you can look at the rapture, it literally does remind me of some sort of like Cold War authoritarian leader with the masses blindly following it. Watch this clip in Mamdani's acceptance speech.
Together, New York, we're going to freeze Together, New York, we're going to make buses fast and Together, New York, we're going to deliver universal.
What does this really look like? Because they believe this, and look how it's just like a rapture. Free everything. And I don't blame them. I understand for all the reasons you said, but it's almost like forgive them. They know not what they do.
It is.
Where does this go? Can we walk through this? God willing, some young person sees it.
So nothing is free. Nothing is free. And the only thing worth something in your life are things that you earned, that were hard, that you struggled for. Why are kids turning to ISIS or Al-Qaeda? To me, that's really easy. They're usually the privileged ones. They're usually coming from very wealthy families who have been privileged their whole life, and they're joining ISIS. How is that happening? That's happening because no one ever demanded anything from them. They have lived their whole life in this bubble where nothing costs them anything. Nothing has any meaning. Their life has no meaning. They're seeing stuff that is, everything is fake. And then they look aside and they go, you know what? These people are willing to die for that. What is that? I mean, that they think this really has meaning. What is that? Well, there's a cause, and I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of a cause. I want meaning in my life. Okay. That's why they're going that direction, because there's no meaning in anything that we are producing right now. Nothing. That's why kids are killing themselves. There's no meaning to life. Meaning comes from struggle. Meaning comes from wanting something and trying to figure out how to get there. Meaning comes from relationships that you don't have online.
Right.
Meaning comes from marrying somebody and arguing and struggling at times, and then healing and figuring out, okay, how are we going to make this continue to go? How can we get better with each other? Those are the hard things. Those provide meaning. Nothing is free. And those things that somebody just tries to hand you, it will end up costing meaning. Okay. So you look at this, where is this going? You run out of other people's money, and you're going to see New York do this. Right. They have already lost, what is it? $8 trillion in tax revenue.
1 million people have fled, and it's projected, according, I think this was the New York Post. I have the headline, actually. Yeah. I pulled the graphic. 1 million people are projected to now leave.
I know. And they're taking their money with them.
Right.
So if you chase those people out of society and you have no tax base there. Who's paying for the city? Eventually, you have to blame it on somebody else. You'll turn to the state. And when the state can't afford it, they'll turn to other states that are doing well. They'll start to blame it on Texas and Florida because California and New York are struggling. How come we can't get what they have? That's why a meritocracy is so important, because you're going to have a point to where I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. I so wanted to live in California when I was growing up. That's all I ever wanted to do was work at KFMB in San Diego, California. And I couldn't live there. It was nuts back then. Okay. Now you can't do business there. You just can't live there. I didn't get a chance to live in the one place in the country where I've always wanted to live. I chose to build a business and have that prosper elsewhere because it wouldn't prosper there. Why should I, who I paid all my taxes and I lost out on my childhood dream of living where I wanted to live, why should I now take my tax dollars and bail you out for a lifetime I knew was insane in the first place? That's where this is going. One side's going to run out of money. They're going to have to blame somebody else. And the other side is going to say, no, you're not taking it from me. We knew you were insane.
Right. Of course. I looked at when these kinds of policies were put into practice in the 70s in New York. But here are two things that are going to make this far worse. And essentially they said, well, public transport fell into disrepair. It got more dangerous because there was no money to manage it. This rent freezes resulted in less housing because capitalists were not incentivized to build there. And as you mentioned, took their business out of the state. And then landlords couldn't turn a profit, so they became slumlords. It was a disaster. And now, because as you mentioned, capital is mobile, these billionaires go to Florida and they work on Zoom. You couldn't do that in the 70s. And you have a massive influx of illegal immigration that they didn't have in the 70s. And Mamdani invites it.
I know.
Glenn.
Here's one thing that you're missing in the 70s that is repeating itself. Back in the 1970s, New York went bankrupt. Okay. And everybody just thinks it's these policies that, they were following. However, it was done by design by two professors at CUNY named Cloward and Piven. And they had this theory that if we take and we get everybody on the dole and we force the city to pay for all of the promises, so anyone who can be on the dole legally, anyone, get them on the dole, it will collapse it and we can reset it. It worked. The federal government had to come in and bail New York City out. Well, Cloward and Piven, one of them's dead. I think it's Piven is still alive. I can't remember. Cloward is Francis Cloward. Yeah, Francis Cloward, I think, is alive still. She's been a part of all of this. This is Cloward and Piven at a national scale. That's why when Biden was in, he was just giving stuff away, and it was like a nonstop game show where we just keep paying for it. More people on the dole, give more money over to Europe, spend more money on doing this, and it just kept going and going and going. That's Cloward and Piven. So you're looking at a system or a strategy that was designed to collapse us financially. And that's also there. And
so, Glenn, you're saying they want to collapse us financially so that it doesn't happen again? Or they're just absolute nihilists and anarchists?
So, no, these are people, and this is the hardest thing for me to understand when I first started researching this back in the early 2000s. I couldn't understand why would people want to do that? Because it's bad. It's bad. Well, at first, it just started with the true Marxists, people who really hate the free market and believe that communism or socialism is the way to go. Okay. So those people, they'll burn it down to the ground. Well, then how do you get corporations to do that? Because corporations don't want to do that. They need to make money. bring yourself to Occupy Wall Street. Occupy Wall Street, you had all of these kids that were out and saying, we're going to occupy Wall Street. We're going to camp out in front. They caused all kinds of problems for the big corporations. Then suddenly they just disappeared. Suddenly it was just over. And you're like, wait, what happened? How did that happen? And then within a year, the leader of Occupy Wall Street was the guest at the World Economic Forum. So what happened was these giant corporations said, look, we don't want your problem. We don't want problems. Okay. What do you want? We want this change. We want this change. We want this change. Great. Just keep it away from us. We'll help you. That's when the funding started coming. It is blackmail, really, except they were in on it. These corporations started to fund all of these different socialist organizations, all of these NGOs. That's how you got the corporations.
Every fall, there's that shift in the air, right? Mornings get a little cooler, the light changes, and suddenly you're reaching for layers that make you feel grounded, comfortable, pulled together. And those are just a few of the things that I love about Quince, because their pieces don't scream for attention, but the second you put them on, you feel the difference. They've nailed the sweet spot of luxury quality without the luxury markup. Their $50 Mongolian cashmere sweaters are ridiculously soft, not too heavy, not too thin, not itchy. It is literally the perfect layer that I wear under a coat or on its own. The denim fits like a dream. Clean lines, flattering on everyone. These are the kind of staples that end up on repeat. It's your personal fall uniform without even trying. My favorite piece is the Italian wool coat. Oh my God. The one I have looks and feels designer, but it costs a fraction of the price. The tailoring is beautiful. The weight is perfect. And somehow I manage to look great effortlessly every time I have it on. And what makes Quince different is how they work. So they partner with ethical top-tier factories, the same ones that produce for major designer labels, and they cut out the middlemen. So you're getting exceptional craftsmanship, responsible production, and prices that are about half of what you'd normally pay for pieces of this quality. So it's refined without being fussy, elevated, but approachable. The kind of wardrobe that makes you feel like you've grown into your style and finally stop compromising between quality and cost. Find all your staples at Quince. Go to quince.com/Jillian for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/Jillian to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/Jillian.
They're trying to do it for their survival. What the communists didn't get, or the socialists didn't get, is they think they're winning. But the WEF, it was actually winning, because that was actually creating, Biden talked about it all the time, these public-private partnerships. That's not that's not communism. That's socialism in fascism. Fascism says the state doesn't own the companies. Private individuals own the companies, as long as they run it the way we say they have to run it and do the things we say they have to do. And then we'll split the profits with them because it'll be good for everybody. So they've gone from this socialist idea of burn it all down to, the corporations will burn it all down so we can have our communist utopia. And the capitalists in business were with the WEF, and they're like, wait a minute, we can come over with you and you'll protect us as companies, but we'll have to do what you say. Okay, we'll do that. And meanwhile, the average American is like, what the hell is happening? What is going on?
Exactly how
Nothing
I feel.
makes sense.
That is exactly how I feel. Nothing makes sense at all.
It does, and I probably have explained it so poorly, and it's kind of like drinking from a fire hose.
Right. I get it.
When you actually know the players, when you've examined how this was all built, it makes perfect sense. Everything is predictable. I said in 1999, I was on WABC radio, and I was new to talk radio. And so people all thought I was, I don't know, they thought I was liberal or something, but I was praising Bill Clinton for one thing, the bombing of the aspirin factory. And I said, he's not trying to take his name off the front page of the papers for Monica Lewinsky. That might be an extra benefit, but that's not what he's doing. He is targeting a guy named Osama bin Laden. Have you read the words of Osama bin Laden? Phones lit up and everybody was like, you communist bedwetting, and I'm like, I'm a conservative. What are you talking about? And nobody knew who he was. Nobody listened. And I read the words of Osama bin Laden on the air. Still, nobody calmed down. And I said, Mark, this is the last thing I said in that hour. Mark my words. Within 10 years, there will be blood, bodies, and buildings in the streets of this city. And then you'll have to choose, are you going to play politics or are you going to take people at their word? All you have to do is listen to what people are actually saying, because 9 out of 10 times they'll do it. When somebody says...
That's my Angelou. Someone shows you who they are, believe them.
Believe them. Believe them. You can't go wrong by taking people at their word and believing them. You can go wrong by not believing, there's something called the gift of fear. Gavin de Becker wrote about this in a book called The Gift of Fear. And the best way to explain it is, how whenever there's a serial killer, they always go to the neighbors, and the neighbors are like, you know what? He was just a great guy. Of course, Fluffy, my dog, barking all the time, didn't trust him at all. Fluffy has what humans have, a gift of fear. And we dismiss it. We rationalize it away. Dogs don't think rationally. So when they sense something wrong, they bark. Listen to your dog. Listen to your dog. Don't act on fear all the time. Just don't rationalize all of it away. If you see things, go, I don't know if that's true, but I'm going to file that away. And when they tell you something crazy, it'll most likely fit into what you went, the first time. Then believe it.
Okay, there's another connection with Mamdani, or I'm sorry, wrong word, another concern. Okay. And Glenn, it has to do with anarchy. And here's what I mean. You talked about the people that pull the strings. Can we pull up the tweet from Alex Soros? Here's Alex Soros, George Soros' son from the Open Society Foundation, with Mamdani, talking about how his dreams for New York City have been realized.
If I were younger, better looking, and you didn't have a woman as your spouse, I would try to. Oh my gosh! Hearing you talk about George Soros, nobody. In 2008, I'm the guy who brought George Soros to the front. No one would talk about him. And I was just dumb enough to not know you don't talk about him. And now to know that he is a household name where people are like, no, look what he's done. Look what he's done. There are countries around the world that have banned him from being in their countries. Why we allow this guy just to run roughshod and pretend that he's a good guy,
right,
is insanity. Insanity.
Can we talk for a second about who this guy is, who his son is, for people who don't know? And I do want to point out one thing for everyone listening. I'm uniquely familiar with him because the Soros family, they're the ones that put the DAs in place in California who did the following. They declined prosecution for many nonviolent misdemeanors, shoplifting, drug possession, quality of life crimes. And what that begot was literally the facilitation of trafficked minors on the streets of Los Angeles because cops are now not allowed to intervene due to anti-loitering laws. They ended cash bail for most offenses. So I personally was robbed by a guy who had duct tape, a knife, and a camcorder. Don't ask me why a camcorder. Very bizarre, but this was in 2012 after being let out of jail just 3 days prior. Thankfully, but for the grace of God, nothing happened. They expanded diversion programs in lieu of jail time. They increased early release recommendations for time served. And we all know what crime looks like in California. We've all seen the videos. Californians voted these guys out in the last election, these Soros DAs, and they wanted to block these the legislation that was put forward by these guys was something called Prop 36 that Gavin Newsom refuses to fund, which is so bizarre. Can you elaborate a bit on who the Soros family is and why it would be alarming that they are funding Mamdani's campaign?
So I would urge you to go find it. It'll be hard to find, but it's out there. And if you can't find it, my staff will help you. I urge you to go and look at an interview that George Soros did in the 90s on 60 Minutes. George Soros is the guy who collapsed the British pound, okay? He put England into bankruptcy. He has done it, I think, in Malaysia. He's done it in a couple of countries. He also is responsible for many color revolutions. He was there and playing a big role when in Ukraine, when the revolution was going on there.
Glenn, will you elaborate for people on what the color revolutions are in case they're not familiar? I'm only recently familiar, by the way.
So color revolution is what we're actually experiencing right now. Color revolution is something that was a CIA idea. And the idea is we don't want to send troops in, but we need to get that leadership out. We need our friends into leadership in that country. So what we would do is we would go in with a plan and we would train radicals on the streets. We would infiltrate the media and we would help people get up into the government to be able to have positions of power. Then create enough pressure to get the people on the street to rise up, collapse it into a new system and collapse it and hand it over to our friends. Okay.
Right.
And it seems organic, but it's not. And we've had them over and over and over again, and we perfected them. Back in the 2000s, early 2000s, I can't remember which one, George Soros got involved in. And at some point, and I can't tell you when or which, but at some point, I am convinced that he and others on the left saw the problem that the WEF and the UN and everybody else saw, all of our central banks saw, and so this is not sustainable. But America stands in the way. So we have to do a color revolution. Color revolutions, we were responsible for the revolution of the Arab Spring. That was not organic. That was an American color revolution. Okay. And they were playing out over and over and over again. And it's happening here. That is one thing that he has been financing like crazy. Like crazy, he's been financing these things. If you go back and look for this interview on 60 Minutes, there's two things you have to know about him. And this is passed into the family because I think it's a real illness. First, with compassion, let me tell you, he grew up in Hungary under the Nazis.
Okay.
And he's Jewish. And his father, to save his son's life, convinces a Christian to take him, say that he's a relative and that he was baptized and he was a Christian, okay, just to save George's life. Everybody else is dead. George survives, okay? But this Christian, one of their jobs is to go into the houses of all of the Jews and then take the stuff and sell the stuff and do it with glee, okay? This was not like, oh, I have to do this. This was the job, and he was fine doing it. George, as a teenager, is doing that. So his family's been liquidated. All of the wealth has been taken. So he's seen this firsthand in his family. Now he's in a new family where they're doing that to other Jews. I have all the compassion in the world. You do whatever that kid had to do to stay alive and stay sane. So I have all the compassion. However, in the interview, you will see, I can't remember who did the interview, but you'll see the interviewer say, have you ever had second thoughts about that? Now, for me, I think that would have been years of therapy. And I would have reflected on that. And I would have carried some guilt around. He said, no, actually, it's just a lot like business. If I didn't do it, somebody else would. He's never spent any time, according to him, reflecting on what he went through as a child. Then, in the same interview, he says that he's asked about destabilizing the world and causing revolutions and collapsing currencies. And he says, I know a lot of people, they'll get hurt by these things, but actually it's kind of fun to see what you can do. That's a psycho. That's an absolute psycho.
Right. Yeah. He's a psychopath. 100%.
Psychopath.
He is the clear definition of that. He is a psychopath.
And he's got billions of dollars, and now his son, who I know very little about, but I have heard he is even more.
Yes, he said so proudly.
Yeah.
He said, I'm more political, code word, than my father. It's like, oh, dear God.
So that it's trouble. And, I don't wish them ill or anything else. I just want an end to the lies. I just want people to make your own decision based on the truth. Every time, I'm one of the first to really target George Soros beginning in 2008. By 2010, his number 2 guy on his staff threatened my life.
I bet.
It was really frightening because George Soros doesn't have to put a hit on somebody. All he has to say is this person is a problem, and that person goes away because there's a million people that would like to get on George Soros's good side and make problems go away. But I was one of the first to do it, mainly because I was too stupid to know, that kind of power and that nobody else was talking about it. But every time you talk about him, they'll say, you're an anti-Semite. I was given the Defender of Israel Award by Benjamin Netanyahu.
I haven't got the you're an anti-Semite one, actually. I'm a little,
You haven't gotten that?
I haven't gotten.
Oh,
it's
my
coming,
gosh.
but I
You'll
don't think
get
because
it.
of Soros. I have gotten a genocidal Zionist, but I've not gotten the anti-Semite label yet. Oh my! But that's so bizarre.
I get both of those, which is really weird.
Oh, that is
Weird.
Okay, I'm waiting for someone to accuse me of like sexual assault, which would also be strange. But it's got to be coming because it just seems to be par for the course for those of us that call out things of this nature.
And by the way, it's his organizations that funded a lot of those. At least in the early days, it was his money that did Media Matters. He's deep into the Tides Foundation.
Right.
He set a lot of these things up. So those smears, he spent a lot of money to perfect this system.
Can we get into that for just a moment? There are a few things about Mamdani that are obviously legitimately concerning, but I noticed that they played the Muslim card. Mamdani did. He made up a story about a fake aunt and a hijab. Like none of this is true. And he did the code switching, taking on the different accents and all of these things. But it's almost like he got people to play this game where they addressed some of the things with regard to him being Muslim, like he doesn't actually have an aunt and a hijab. And after 9/11, why weren't you worried about the thousands of people that died in the World Trade Center? But what they did was they turned around and they shut down anybody critiquing him by calling him Islamophobic. And it reminds me of those of us who are calling out biological males in female sports or chemical castration for gender dysphoric kids. Transphobe. Nothing to see here. They're a transphobe. If you point out the ways in which DEI has gone too far, racist. No, you're a racist. Same with, hey, we can't be healthy at any size. Oh my God, you fat shamer. And I wonder if that's why he himself brought the Muslim piece to the table. No one cares, dude. Nobody. But when you do engage in radical behavior, again, I'll say it one more time, like giving your love to the Holy Land Five, who are guys that went to jail for funding Hamas, we're going to be forced to address that and not address the more radical things that hopefully kids can see, because immediately they're like, you know what you are? You're just an Islamophobe. Do you think this was on purpose?
Yeah. In the 1960s, it was the CIA, 50s or 60s, the CIA was the one that came up with conspiracy theorist. Call them a conspiracy theorist, okay? There are conspiracy theories, and there are conspiracy falsehoods, and there are conspiracy facts, okay? But once you call somebody a conspiracy theorist, it's over. So what do you do with that kind of power? Well, people learn from it. So now you're a homophobe. Now you're a transphobe. Now you're whatever. Because once you get that label, people dismiss you. And so they chip away at your credibility a little piece at a time. And if you're like me and dumb enough to continue to talk about all of it, you eventually become, the label, the introduction for you is an amazing collection of absurdities. Right. But on the Islamic front, it is important to understand, I did a chalkboard and everybody, even those on the right, said he's a crazy conspiracy theorist and it doesn't make any sense. I did a chalkboard and I did it every night. And I said, the Islamists, communists, anarchists, socialists, revolutionaries will all work together to destabilize first Israel, then Europe, and then the rest of the world, and it will finally come to America. And everybody said their argument was that they don't get along. What are you talking about? Socialists and anarchists, socialists, communists, they want giant state. Anarchists want no state. Islamists, are you kidding me? They don't want the same thing. They want Sharia law. The communists don't want Sharia law. You're seeing them now. They're all working together. And what people don't understand is they're so arrogant. They all believe, I'm going to use these guys, just exactly like Chuck Schumer. I'll use these guys for a while, but I'll still be in control. And we'll take care of them when all is said and done. In 1979 in Iran, the Marxists and the Islamists worked together to overthrow the Shah of Iran. Well, who had the power? Well, the Marxists and the Islamists were supposed to share power. But soon as they had power, they killed these people. 30,000 people were jailed and killed by the Islamists. It's the same story. It happens over and over and over again. And there is an Islamist, different than Muslim, an Islamist movement. And they will tell you in their mosque on tape, they will say, the best thing they'll say is, it's only a matter of time. Just look at the birth rates. You will be an Islamist country. Okay. That's the best. That's the most, the most docile thing they will say about taking over the West. Others will come right out and say it, and you're seeing it a lot over in Europe and in England, where they'll just come out and say, yeah, well, we now have control of many things and you will submit. And what you're having is all of these people working together for chaos, and everybody's building a little structure thinking it's going to fall into their hands in the end. Whose hands is it going to fall into? I don't know. The American Revolution is the only revolution in the history of the world that was ended by the exact same people who started it with the same principles. It's the only time. Every other time somebody starts it because they think they're going to get it, and then they're killed, and then somebody else is killed, and then they're killed. And then finally you get the really bad guy that takes over. That's the way most revolutions happen. And I think that's what's going to happen here if we're not awake and guard ourselves, our hearts, our minds, and our history. Remember who we are. Remember what you were taught was right from the beginning. Just remember the golden rules. Just remember, you're not supposed to hate your enemy. You're supposed to love your enemy. You are supposed to stand up for truth. You have a responsibility not to participate in lies, and that means just standing by and being quiet because you're going to lose something. Your children are going to lose their freedom. You don't understand how this America is a blip in human history. It's an anomaly in human history. Freedom like this has never, ever happened before. And if you want to live like China, great. In the end, if you don't wake up, it's going to be communist China or it's going to be Islam. I would like a third choice. I would like freedom. I'd like constitutional freedom. Nobody's fighting for that. America is the only hope. We just have to remember it.
Bill Maher said, and he's, listen, Bill Maher's a moderate, and he can say all of this stuff, and for some reason, people don't attack him for it, or very rarely. He referenced a Bernie AOC rally where one of the kids threw a Palestinian flag on the stage, and he goes, this is where the adults in the room stand up and say to these kids, oh, they covered an American flag. I'm sorry, that's what they did. They covered the American flag with the Palestinian flag. And they say, this is a symbol of freedom. And he, pops up the picture of the American flag. And he's like, this is not. And it's a woman in like a full burqa.
Yeah.
I don't understand why these kids don't understand this. But this brings me to a bigger question. With regard to New York, I pulled this quote. Let me find this here to see if I can figure out here it is. Okay. So I was actually listening to this podcast, Dad Saves America, and he referenced this, but the journalist is this guy, H.L. Mencken. And he goes, democracy is the theory that common people know what they want and they deserve to get it, good and hard. And I stopped for a second because I know the inclination, and I see it with the Dems, like Trump can do nothing good. A ceasefire? No, he's still a fascist, monster, authoritarian psychopath.
Anti-Semitic.
Yeah, a trade deal with China, a reckless, sociopath, this and that, and crashing the economy. Like he can do no good, and they root against him. I don't want to do that. And Cuomo said this in his acceptance speech, and it made me feel like at least there are some adults in the room. Could we have that one, guys? Can we take a look at this clip of Cuomo?
Congratulations to Zoran Mamdani. No. That is not right. That is not right, and that is not us. That is not us. The night was their night, and as they start to transition to government, we will all help any way we can because we need our New York City government to work. We want it to work for all New Yorkers because our city is the greatest city in the world. And we will unite for New York City because we love New York City.
What am I rooting for, then, is my question. I want New Yorkers to be okay. I want them to have better quality of lives. Most importantly, I want them to be safe. I don't want to be right, actually, about Mamdani. I want to be wrong. But at the same time, the people behind him, that concerns me. The things that he really stands for. And he'll tell you, I'm going to close Rikers. I don't want more than 4,000 prisoners. Like, what do you mean? You don't want more than 4,000? This isn't arbitrary. So if this guy's a killer and he makes 4,001, we can't have more than 4,000 in jail. Like, but Glenn, what are we rooting for? Listen, if we're good people, and I want to really strive to be that, what am I rooting for here?
You are rooting for that sense that Cuomo is talking about. You want to live in a country where we all want success, and we all define success relatively the same way. We want our streets to be safe. We want our kids to be educated. We want to be free. We don't want, we don't want freedom without responsibility. We want to help the poor. We want to help the oppressed. That, generally speaking, we all want that. But do we now? Do we all define things that way? Our slogan as our nation is e pluribus unum, from many, one. People came here from all over the world, and still do. They come here from all over the world for what? A chance to make it. Why could they make it here and you can't make it elsewhere? Because the one thing that we had in common was this. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that governments are instituted among men to protect those rights. That is what the American experiment is. Government protects the rights of the people. That's its job. And it goes on the next sentence, and if that government ever becomes hostile to those rights, it's the right and responsibility, or the right and the duty of Americans to shake off the chains of that government and replace it with another more likely to protect those rights. Okay, so the whole thing is about protect the right of the individual. We used to believe that I would come from, my people came from Germany in the 1800s. I don't know where yours came from, but everybody here is an immigrant.
Yep.
And we came from other places somewhere along the line because we couldn't make it. Because I know in Germany back then, you weren't allowed to swim. You couldn't swim in the river. Okay. You couldn't swim in the river? What are you talking about? Can't swim in the river. You can't swim in a public lake? What is that? I don't even know, but you couldn't do it. Okay. All of these things that you couldn't do because the kings, the lords, the ladies, they made all of the rules. If the reason why we didn't have an Elon Musk until America, the reason why we didn't have these great inventions is because if you were working on the land of a lord, that land was given by the king. That lord, whatever you did, if you come up with a better toothbrush, you come up with the light bulb, you work, you toil, you don't get any of that. The Lord takes that, and now the Lord makes them and sells them, and you're left in the dust. So only the rich got richer. You could not leave your station. If you were born this way, you're always that way. People would come here because they could start fresh. It didn't matter where they came from, who their parents were, where they grew up. It didn't matter. And none of that mattered. Do you have a better idea? Will you work hard for it? Then you deserve success. That's the America, the idea that we need to get back to. We have lost the idea that all men are created equal by a creator. And life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is all of us. All of us get that. And no government, no person can change that. Government now is saying, we will dole out the rights. We will tell you what's true and what's not true. That is not the American experiment. So what you're feeling when you watch that and you go, the adults are in the room, you want that because he's reflecting a time when we still did believe in relatively the same things. Now you're feeling like, what am I even rooting for? Because we're no longer that, and you're having a hard time. It's a clash of civilizations.
Yes.
You can't make sense of it.
What am I
because
rooting
this
for?
Is right, but I don't want it here.
Yeah, it's
because
like,
this isn't that.
I want Mamdani to succeed in making the city affluent and safe. I don't want him to succeed in his vision of freeing prisoners and seizing the sources of production and getting rid of personal property. So I'm like, what?
But you know what, Jillian, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. This has been tried.
Yeah.
This has been tried so many times. It doesn't work. So this is a big hypothetical. Okay. But if the seizing of private property and production, if the releasing of prisoners actually made a better, safer, more prosperous world, wouldn't you at least consider
Yes.
going, right?
Okay.
Immediately.
Yes,
you
I
would
would.
consider it. You'd be like, okay, all right, well, I was wrong. It works. Okay.
Okay.
But it doesn't work. It never
It's never worked.
never works.
Right.
Do you know that Jamestown, where 1619 Project said, we started in Jamestown. We didn't. Plymouth is where we started. Do you know that Jamestown, the settlers of Jamestown came and they were socialists? They weren't called socialists at the time, but they implemented the socialist mentality that we put it all in one pile. It doesn't matter. You just take according to your needs. Okay. The Pilgrims did the same thing. In Jamestown, it ended in cannibalism. Okay. We've dug up bones where you can see the bite marks on the bones of children as they were trying to get the meat off of the bones of the children. Okay. It ended horrifically in starvation. In Plymouth, it ended, but they were reasonable people and went, okay, God tells us to share, but this doesn't work because some people are getting lazy. Some people are just living off of other people's work, and it's creating all these problems. It doesn't work. And so they stopped, and they went back to Adam Smith, Wealth of Nations and Moral Sentiments. When you take those two books and you put them together, that's where the magic happens. And that's why they were prosperous when Jamestown wasn't. We've tried this forever.
Right.
It never works.
Somehow these kids also are unaware that Nazi means National Socialist.
I know.
I bet that
I know.
I just don't, I can't, I'm like, guys, they did it in Cuba. And they're like, no, there's a distinction with communism. And it's like, well, is there? I mean, what he's suggesting.
You know what the distinction is? According to Marx, here's the distinction. Socialism is the road to communism. Marx would have said that Russia wasn't fully communist, okay?
Yeah. Because
you don't ever get to the utopia until you arrive at communism, okay? And that's a different, then utopia happens. But socialism is that road to communism. So the only distinction is where on the scale and which direction are you going? If you're going into socialism and you're growing the government, then you are clearly going towards communism. It's only the step. As he said, it's the vehicle that you arrive in.
There's one more question I want to ask you, because there's two other ballot measures that passed, or two ballot measures that passed that got a decent amount of attention. But I don't feel like people are looking beyond the obvious here. So one is Prop 50 in California, right? And it's like, okay, we're gerrymandering, but, the Republicans gerrymandered. We've been doing this forever. And this kind of leads you to the apportionment maps, right? And how many congressional seats does California actually have? We're going to push almost all of them Republican, and this is a tale as old as time. But what it opens up, because it oddly also happened at the same time that voter ID was rejected in Maine. And I'm like, well, hold on. And to be fair, there were some things on that ballot in Maine that really stunk and shouldn't have been, in my opinion, accompanying the voter ID. And it had to do with mail-in ballots for people who were disabled. And I'm just like, why? Why would you put these things together? That is so dumb. But nevertheless, it's pretty straightforward why we would want people to have ID. So now you're thinking like, all right, hold on a second. We're rigging the congressional seats in California, but according to census maps, California is supposed to lose congressional seats by 2030. And then you keep hearing everybody talking about, oh, well, the reason the Democrats shut the government is because they want billions for people who are here illegally. You're like, well, okay, is that true? And then I don't know if you saw this. Elon Musk just went on Rogan, and this clip went viral. Take a look at this. Kind of ties all these things together in a weird way.
The reason you have the standoff is because if the hundreds of billions of dollars to create a financial incentive to have this giant magnet to attract illegals from every part of Earth to these states, if that is turned off, the illegals will leave because they're no longer being paid to come to the United States and stay here.
Wow.
And then they will lose a lot of voters. The Democratic Party will lose a lot of voters.
And they would have a very difficult job if this is kicked out of reintroducing it into a new bill.
Yes.
Especially once things start normalizing.
Yes. So, in a nutshell, the Democratic Party wants to destroy democracy by importing voters. And the Republican Party disagrees with that.
And the ruse is that if you don't accept what they're doing, then you're a threat to democracy.
Yes.
As they try to destroy democracy.
Yes.
By importing voters.
That is literally what they're doing.
People to only vote for them and overwhelming the system.
Yes. And by the way, it's a strategy that, if allowed to work, would work. And in fact, has worked. California is supermajority Democrat.
Yeah.
And there's so much gerrymandering that occurs. It's crazy.
Glenn, I want to show you two other things real quick. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, how are they voting? And then, of course, you understand that, the congressional seats also represent electoral college votes. And do they make a path to citizenship? So people who came here this way and got free stuff are, they're beholden to the Democrats, so they vote for them. But I'm thinking, I remember a clip of Newsom on Sean Ryan's show this past summer saying out-migration is a lie. It's not true. Because we're all talking about it. We're talking about it with New York. 1 million people are going to leave. They're leaving California. Here he is saying this isn't true. Take a look at this one.
The California exit, by the way, complete bullshit. Now, the last 2 years, we've seen significant growth in California's population. So it's reversed and record-breaking tourism.
Okay. One last thing I want to show you. So I just did a simple search on ChatGPT because from an observational perspective, I'm like, everyone I know is leaving. Everybody I know has left. So I asked ChatGPT, how many domestic citizens left California? So ready for this? Between 2020 and 2024, California experienced net domestic migration losses of roughly 1.5 million residents. Over the same period, California had a positive net international migration of almost 1 million people. So, but Newsom fully omits this key fact that, the population has gone up because they're coming from other countries. And again, I know we're both not against immigration. You just talked about we're both immigrants, but illegal immigration. So this kind of comes down to, and then you've got Mamdani now, come on, come all, we're all immigrants, everything's run by immigrants. But he doesn't make this distinction of legal versus illegal. And then he says to Trump, good luck. You're going to deport one of us, essentially, right? You're going to take one of us, you're going to have to get through all of us. I'm like, okay, so now you got what? An insurrection, literally. All of it kind of has the same themes.
Because it's the same story. Did you notice what Joe Rogan said? What his response was? All to overwhelm the system. That is word for word the Cloward and Piven strategy. Overwhelm the system. If you really put all of this together, it comes back to 100 people. And it's the same 100 people they have this goal. They know what they're doing. It's very well laid out. And it is to collapse the system. And the truth doesn't matter. The ends justify the means. And so they will call you any name. They'll say anything. They'll, do this weird hand thing as he's talking about, lies about how, I don't even know what that was. But he does
it all the time now. It's
I know.
Frustrating.
It doesn't matter. And in some ways, you waste energy trying to understand where they're coming from once you've recognized liar, complete liar, has no moral compass. Stop trying to figure them out.
Okay.
Try to stop. Just stop. You're wasting your time. You'd be much better off trying to explain to the people who haven't figured that out yet why this is happening. Because it leads you to nonstop frustration. I've exposed these people for 25 solid years. This has been, and I didn't want to do any of this. I'm much more of an entertainer than anything. I didn't want to do any of this. And I'm doing it now for 25 years. And every year for a while there, I was like, honey, we're going to get back to normal here soon. We're not getting back to normal. But it's our duty to do it. And it becomes more and more frustrating every single day until like 2 years ago, I just adopted this. Well, it's going to be interesting to see how this all works out. You say that when you get really frustrated, you just say that. Wow, it is going to be really fascinating to watch how all of this works out. You've got to release some of this away from you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not responsible for all of it. I've done my part. I still do my part. I do everything I can, but it's going to be interesting to see how the rest of society works this out, because I can't change it.
I know.
I will keep trying to wake people up, but
yes.
You have to detach from it at some point. Otherwise, your head's going to blow. You're just going to be like, I can't take it anymore.
Such a good point. You know, I was speaking with a doctor who was crucified during COVID for calling out certain things that are now obvious.
Yeah.
And
by the way, they were obvious then too. But
I know, Bob. And she goes, Jill, I didn't want to do any of this. This is a woman who went to Harvard, the whole thing. You know, she's like, I don't want this. This is not what I wanted for myself, to be caught up in all of these lawsuits and all of these things. And I feel the same. I said to my wife the other day, I thought, should I have done this? Should we have just stuck to lunges? Like, would I have been able to go to my grave thinking, you know, because Glenn, like, are we changing it? Are we, you know, you pay the price, right? All the names and all the things they call you and discredit you and it costs you and all of that. You paid the price. There's no money. Like, this is not, there are much easier ways to make money. I mean, so I'm just wondering. I
believe in eternal consequences.
Okay.
I believe in eternal consequences.
Okay.
So if you understand all men are created equal and endowed by that creator with certain inalienable rights, these rights don't belong to us. They don't belong to us. I'm not fighting for my right. I'm fighting to protect the rights he gave all men. And if I lose those rights, if I am part of a system that lost those rights, I don't know. When I get home, Dad's going to go, and what exactly did you do? What exactly did you do? Dad, I didn't save it, but I tried as hard as I could. I did everything I could. I'm clean. I did everything I could. I do not want to I would give this up tomorrow in a heartbeat, but I have a moral obligation to stand. And let me flip that around from a heavy duty or burden to what it really is. It's a gift. It's a gift. We could have drifted our whole life without realizing who we really are. What are you really capable of? What do you really believe? What are you really willing to stand up for? What is it you'll say, not enough, not another step across this line. Don't do it. What is that? If we weren't pushed like we're being pushed now, we wouldn't know what we really were created with. All of the tools, all of the strength and the courage, and it's coming out everywhere. It's coming out from people all over the world. It's an honor to live at this time. It's an honor to serve at this time. It is.
You make me feel a heck of a lot better, Glenn. Where can, I mean, this is silly, but where can everyone find you so we can be inspired and educated on a regular basis?
GlennBeck.com. And I'm launching something in January that is going to be focused on teaching these principles, teaching history. And I would invite you to join me in January at GlennBeck.com.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time and all of the knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you.